surgeons keep our hearts beating. They do the amazing, help save lives, and so can you. Your CSL plasma donation can help create 24 critical life-saving medicines that can give Grandpa the chance for his heart to swell when he meets his new grandson, or give a bride the chance for her heart to skip a beat on her wedding day. Every plasma donation helps more than you know. Do the amazing. Help save lives. Donate today at your local CSL Plasma Center and be rewarded for your generosity.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick here tonight to talk about the annual schedule release for the NFL, which came out today on May 11th. And you'll probably be listening to this on the 12th or shortly thereafter. Here to discuss it with me is Alec Poulianos of One Winning Pod. Alec, how you doing?
Doing well, Ken. Always good to get the schedule and be able to plan out the rest of the year.
You just getting back from vacation yourself. I'm glad we could have you on for this show. Good trip you had?
I had a lovely trip. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. Good to see my old roommate and his wife, and just kind of spend time out there and see the sights and all that good stuff. Yeah,
six hours of time difference involved, and you were still able to be on draft night, and we really do appreciate you staying up to 3 a.m. for us on some of that, or probably even later. But
yeah, it was.
Anyway.
We were wrapping up around 6, but it was fine. Honestly, I was so pumped by the draft that I wasn't really tired, and honestly, the next days I was really good. I was really surprised how little sleep I got and how okay I felt. I guess it's cool what happens when you're really into something while you're staying up.
All right, very cool. All right, well, let's talk the schedule release here because it's the big news of the day. Certainly, the Ravens, in some ways, certainly came out with a positive schedule. But let me tell you the point of this show before we talk about this. The Ravens can't do anything about who they're playing or where they are playing them. So in the old Get Smart terms, you'll remember this if you're about my age, we care about the when, we don't care about the who or the where. The who or the where were already determined by last year's schedule and the normal rotational rules. So it's all about the when and just how much the NFL scheduling favors or disfavors each NFL team, handicaps each NFL team. So anyway, we're going to go through the various conditions that I have in my system for putting a numeric score on that. And Alec, I want you to step in with comments at any time. We'll get a chance to talk about the schedule in general at the end of the show. But I want to start with that London game in Week 6 against Tennessee.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely a big swinger right there.
Kind of interesting in the case of the Ravens that they're going to Tennessee. My first question, Maureen, kind of yelled up the stairs and said they're playing at Tennessee in Week 6 and or in London in Week 6. And I said, oh no. And, then we learned they're playing in Tottenham. And our rule is we always want to go to a new stadium whenever we can. So we'll be going to that game.
Nice.
And because last time they played at Wembley. But anyway, my first question was, are they as the home or the road team? And they're the road team. Thank goodness. That makes all the difference in the world in terms of the value lost here. Kansas City actually playing a home game in London is a very big deal for them. If I were a Chiefs fan, I'd be upset about it, to a certain degree. This is the Ravens' second trip to London, second time as the road team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great win for them. Honestly, I really hate these home, but they're not home games for teams. Mm-hmm. I think it's total garbage for everybody involved, right? It's not good for the fans that have season tickets. It's not really good for the team and their overall competitiveness. It's just very, very bad.
Yeah, it's generally not a great thing. Now the Ravens did something interesting for this game. They are going to London, so effectively they've got a short week with the jet lag on the way back. Not worried about getting out there, but because Tennessee's on the same disadvantage that they would have. But I'm worried about the next week they come back and they play. I believe it's the Lions in the following week. Let me just make sure of that here.
It is, yeah.
It's Detroit in Week 7. It's at home. So at home is a little bit better, but basically Not a good thing to be playing the week after a London game. Now, the Ravens chose to do that. They could have put their bye in that week, and they decided instead to drop their bye back to week 13. Just in general terms, what's your thinking on that in terms of the value of having a bye in week 7, if perhaps it would have meant that the Detroit game was played in week 13 instead?
Selfishly, I would have liked that, just based on like, I was hoping that we would be on bye that week, but
Is that Greek Festival week?
No, that's not the Greek Festival week. That's a different week.
Right.
But I was hoping that like with the London game, I honestly think I would have taken the bye there versus the week 13, because I feel like week 13 is just so late in the season. They're both not great. Week 13, play 12 games beforehand. Week 7, if that was the bye, you would have 10 games after it, and then the playoff push. Neither are ideal, but I think I would have preferred week 7 set you up best for that next game and have the London game have as little impact to you as possible.
Unbelievably, 2 teams have their bye in week 14, Arizona and Washington.
Oh, goodness.
So, that is very late. The average week of the bye this year, 9.375. So, for purposes of the scoring system, I used an average of week 9, which is one of the factors I looked at. But getting back to the London game for a second, the fact that the Ravens didn't take their bye afterwards, to me, makes it a bigger negative. If they had a bye that following week, then they'd be home and they would mitigate the impact of the jet lag, I think, and they'd be playing on a normal footing normal post-bye footing, in fact, that following week. But in this case, I'm a little bit concerned about what's going on. I wonder, did the Ravens think that perhaps by taking a bye week in week 7, they might have had players taking time off in Europe, and they really didn't want that.
Interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah. So, it's something where players got to get back to the facility. Maybe you normalize more by just going home. And then at least if players are going to take their bye week off, they take it in the United States. They do what a lot of players do and go to New York to party or do other things go to Las Vegas, whatever, inside the United States, or go somewhere with their family and do things. But anyway, if they're in Europe, it's like you've lost an additional degree of control over that situation. All right. Well, anyway, in terms of scoring for the Ravens on that's a -2 they got, and we're going to be rolling through these in terms of point scoring for their game in London with no bye following. So if they'd had a bye following, it would have been a 0. Second factor we're going to talk about is when they play teams. When they play on Thursday. All right. Now, a little bit of background here. It's a big advantage to play on Thursday. It's a big disadvantage to play Thursday on the road. Huge advantage to play Thursday at home. And one of the things that's happened to the Ravens in recent years is they haven't had a home Thursday game be a divisional game, but they've had some road Thursday games be divisional games. And that's kind of really been tightening my colon as we've gone along in this process. Is that, in fact, I believe the last 2 years they didn't even have a home Thursday game. They'd gone a couple of years without one, but they do have one this year. It's at home. It's against Cincinnati, and there is probably no better single thing they could have had on their entire schedule than that relative gain against a major divisional foe.
Correct. Yeah, this is a huge game. I was watching the schedule release thing with Sarah Ellison and Bobby Trossett on their channel, and her big wish was like, I don't want to play the Bengals the last week, and if we do have to play them the last week, I want it to be at home. And she got her wish in doubly. Like, we're not playing them in the last week. And I think this home game Thursday night is a huge advantage, like you said. Honestly, looking at that, I think that could be, mattering on how the rest of the schedule goes beforehand, that could really decide the division, that game right there. And having that advantage on your side is a huge help.
It's always enormous. It always has enormous tiebreaker implications, that game, and not necessarily just for the division, maybe for a wild card as well. That it's an AFC game. You want to win that. It's a potential common opponents game against other teams that may be wild card threats. So it's one you really want to make sure you have the best possible chance to win. And playing at home on a Thursday, not much better in terms of advantage than that. You could be playing the team coming off your own bye would be the thing that would be better. But that's pretty darn good. So anyway, the Ravens play that home Thursday game. If you look at the other Thursday games in the division, the Browns have one. It's at home. Somehow Pittsburgh has two, and both are at home, which is absurd, to say the least. But an enormous advantage for them. And then Cincinnati plays one Thursday game, that's the normal amount. And they play it on the road against a divisional foe, which is about as much as you can have your hands tied behind your back by the schedulers.
For sure. And I think another thing worth pointing out is there's a compounding benefit for the Ravens in that the next week they go away to the Chargers for Sunday night. And they have a mini bye against a good opponent and a West Coast travel.
A long trip, yeah.
So
that's a very good point.
That's a very benefit. Like that's not captured in the scoring system, but that's a nice little side benefit too.
You're absolutely right. It's not captured in the scoring system, and it's captured in theory in the Thursday thing. But the fact that they're going to the West Coast, and I didn't put it in the notes that I said as well, in terms of how it probably should have been a subjective adjustment of a point for that as well. So yeah, I may make a change on that to do it. But that's a great point, Alec. So now another thing we look at as we go down the line, and this is where you don't always get this from other folks here, but when your opponents play in the week before you is very important. And in particular, opponents coming off a bye, opponents coming off a Thursday game, or opponents coming off a Monday game, all are different things. Opponent Thursday games, you want to avoid like the plague. That's you're playing a team coming off a mini bye. And the Ravens have none of those this year. A tremendous benefit. I'm not really sure how they got that and another advantage we're going to talk about later in the same schedule, but it's a marvelous advantage to not play any team coming off a mini bye the entire season.
I feel like the way they got it is that the NFL does not think about this at all, which is kind of sad. Because of the huge swings you see in how these games are scheduled, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's no one considering these factors when they make the schedule.
I think that would be enormously, if they've got that bad, it's like basically as bad as the Russian air defense over the Kremlin right now. It's unforgivably bad for something this important in this competitive league that everybody loves to microanalyze.
So the one thing I do know they do, and we actually will maybe talk about it in the overall schedule, is that they try to put divisional games in the very beginning and the very end of the season because they want to try to get the division, little blow for blows going on and try to keep it tight early on. There's actually a pretty good podcast by the Acquired podcast talk about the NFL. It's very, very long. And they also go into scheduling and how they basically build the whole schedule just to increase drama. Like it's intentionally to make drama during the season. Sure. Yeah,
that makes all kinds of sense. I mean, it's been said often that the NFL is a league that really understands it in terms of promoting itself. And they have a rolling news schedule through the entire year. But the schedule release, I mean, they could release it 1 week per hour for 18 hours if they wanted to. And probably, people so we have the NFL schedule release marathon coming up. So
don't give me any ideas, Ken.
Yeah, believe me, we're not too far from that with the leaks the way they do it.
I know.
The opponent Thursday games. So the Ravens have none, and this is important in the division. The Browns have none, but both the Steelers and the Bengals have two. So if you have one, it's a normal amount. Your score would be 0 for that category. So both the Ravens and Browns get a +3 in that category. Both the Steelers and Bengals get a -3. So a big relative gain versus the Steelers and Bengals on the opposition playing on the previous Thursday. Ready to move on? Anything else?
I think so. I mean, like you said, it's great that the Ravens lucked out that way, and it's interesting that was it 2 divisional foes? Yeah, not so much. Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely. In fact, one of the things I'd be saying is, and I tell you, if I was a Cincinnati analyst, I would be pissed. There'd be a lot of profanity right now in Cincinnati. For the last 12 hours, 18 hours, however long the schedule's been leaked for, directed at the screen based on this absurdly unbalanced schedule in terms of the when. It'd be hard to construct it worse for the Bengals than what was done. Of course, it'd be hard to construct it better for the Bengals than what it was last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so, 2 years ago.
Anyway, this is what it was, and of course we can say that now because we're on the benefiting from it. All right, so the Ravens. We move on and we look at Monday Night Football games now. Now, Monday Night Football games, how do they affect things? As much as fans seem to like having night football and primetime schedule and feel dissed when their team doesn't get primetime games suck. Okay. I mean, in particular, I'm not primetime, specifically Monday night games suck. You have to play on short rest the next week. You don't gain any advantage on it in that week against the team you're playing. There's no home road value to it. About all that you can look at is and say it's not quite as bad when you play at home the next week. So how the scoring works for Monday Night Football is everybody's expected to have one Monday night game from the total number of Monday night games and the total number of teams. But if you have zero Monday night games, it's plus 2 points and it's minus 2 points for every Monday night game above one. Right. Okay, 0 for one. So anyway, you can see how that works. The other adjustment I make for that is if you play at home the week after Monday Night Football, you get a +1. If you play on the road, you get a -1. Okay, right. So it mitigates slightly in either direction or makes worse your situation the following week. So the Ravens play 2 Monday night games. It's actually the most in the division. They play in week 14 against the LA Rams. It's after a bye, but that doesn't really help them much. And then they play in week 16 against the 49ers on Christmas night, which a lot of people, I'm sure, will not like. And originally I thought that the games were scheduled early that week, that there were a bunch of Saturday games that week, but I think they're planning to play them on Sunday. And that means that it's only a 1-day disadvantage as opposed to a 2-day disadvantage, which would have certainly been something I'd want to set an adjustment for. Neither of these games, in terms of the Rams game is in Baltimore, the game is at San Francisco. They have to be played no matter what. The fact that they're at Jacksonville the week after the Rams is probably a bigger concern than the Rams game itself, certainly. And for that San Francisco game, is flying to the West Coast, come back on short rest, and playing Miami at home. So they have one extra Monday night game, that's a -2, and they have a split with a +1 and a -1 for playing a road game and a home game after their 2 Monday night games. Total -2.
I am like, wait, what? I think we might have this wrong, Ken.
Well, I'm sorry. What do I have wrong?
Oh, okay. I see what it is. Oh, wait, I'm seeing the Rams game at 1:00.
The Rams game at 1:00 in Baltimore.
Yeah. Why is that in the Monday night?
So, wait a minute. I think it is a Monday night game. I mean, could I be wrong about that? If it's wrong, then that's terrific.
I think it's Sunday, December 10th, according to the graphic I pulled. Unless the graphic I pulled is wrong.
Let's make sure of this. This is one of these things you want to get right on the time. And I don't know what I took it from, but I think it was a Ryan Mink thing he sent out.
Yeah, I'm looking at the thing. There's a Monday.
You're right. You are
a Monday night Commanders game, but it's preseason. So, yeah, I guess let's adjust the score then.
Yeah, let's adjust the score indeed. So, yeah, it's funny because I don't even have. All right. Let's adjust the score. Okay, so we're go back to that. The Rams game. This is great. It's been rare that I've gone through an entire thing and not made a mistake on this. So the Ravens now, instead of a -2, have a +1 in this category from playing a home game after their road Monday night game at San Francisco. So appreciate this. Thanks for the review there. And instead of -2, they're a +1 in that category. The rest of the division has all one Monday night game, and only the Steelers play. Now, the Steelers and Bengals both play on the road after their Monday night game. So each of them ends up with a -1, and the two teams have a Monday night game and then play at home the next week. The Browns and Ravens each get a +1. So in the relative sense, not the biggest swings on that particular category for the Ravens.
I will say, though, the plethora of late night games at the end of the season as an analyst is just like, it's already, it already becomes like a little bit of a drag near the end of the year sometimes. And then you're like, all these night games they're just a little twist of the knife.
A London game going to make that a lot worse in terms of getting home and getting it done. I mean, road trips in general are hard, but we'll be going to LA and to London, and those are going to be a full day delayed for folks out there looking for content.
And also the other thing about the LA game that's just a little bit of a bummer is it's the holiday weekend, so like the cost of that travel is going to be a lot higher too. I was hoping that game would be on like a very boring weekend. you know, I assumed it would be prime time, and I was right. But yeah, unfortunately,
you're going to try and head out, or with Thanksgiving, probably not.
For many reasons, I cannot go that weekend, unfortunately. So yeah, Thanksgiving's part of the problem. So yep, unfortunately, I will not be making the trip out there, and I'm bummed about it because I was looking forward to it.
All right, new stadium for us. That doesn't happen too often, so that's a good one. Let's move on. The next thing is, once you considered your own Monday night games, you also got to play your opponent's cards here and see who's played Monday Night Football the week before. Now, the Ravens, unfortunately, did not play a single team coming off Monday Night Football, which is kind of it's disadvantageous, but they have no right to complain after playing no teams that are coming off Thursday Night Football either. You'd make that trade no heartbeat because the Thursday night is a larger concern. But they get a -2 for playing no teams coming off Monday Night Football. The Browns have one. The Steelers have none also. So this makes up for a little bit of the Steelers' Thursday good fortune of having 2 home Thursday games. And the Bengals have exactly one. So nobody in the division really won out in this category, but the Ravens and Steelers were slight marginal losers in terms of not playing a team coming off a Monday night game. All right, so we move on. The bye week, and this is going to be one of the ones I know you have something to say about, Alec, because this is, the Ravens deferred their bye week all the way to week 13, and they didn't have a choice of when they took their bye week. They basically are told, you can take it after here or we'll assign it to you, I believe. Mm-hmm. I don't think they say you can take it week 13 or week 7 when you get a London game. I don't believe they do.
Right.
Wouldn't shock me if that's the case, but I don't believe that's the case. I think they basically just have to say whether they want it then or not. For scheduling purposes, it just seems like it'd be hard to construct the schedule completely if you didn't force teams to make a deferral choice after knowing when their international game was scheduled.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't imagine they would have the other option in hand already.
Yeah. So anyway, the Ravens at week 13.
He's wild. He's sweet. He'll shred your couch on a whim, then come crawling back to you, purring happily at your feet. His behavior may be erratic, but he's still the world's best cat, who deserves nothing less than world's best cat litter. The #1 natural and sustainable litter brand with no harmful chemicals or silica dust. Trade your clay today. Get world's best cat litter for the world's best cat.
I believe the latest bye in team history. They've had something in the ballpark. I believe in 2000 they might have had a week off in week 12, and that was at a time where there were 31 teams in the league, so every team was off in some week. In fact, I believe the Arizona Cardinals might not have played in week 1, which is just beyond weird for something like that to occur. But anyway, the Ravens have a bye in week 13 this year. And I guess I'd ask you, because all the other teams in the division have fairly early buys. Do you think this represents a significant advantage for the Ravens, or do you think this is something that, boy, they could do with a different bye week?
It's not my initial preference. So we had a little conversation before the show started. The way the heuristic works is the bye week -9 to create the advantage points. and thus being this late bye, we get +4. I kind of personally was saying maybe at 9 I would do +2, and then each week off of it would fall off by 1, just because I really like kind of splitting the season directly in half. I don't know if that's how the team likes it. That's my hunch. I do think if I had to choose though, maybe it's like inversely weighted. I much rather have a late bye than an early bye.
So if your choice is week 13 or week 6, which are they're not equivalently distant from week 9, but it's the 6th and the 6th to last week of the season. You'd rather have week 13 than week 6?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you the devil's advocate argument for that, even though I agree with you, and obviously my scoring system agrees with you in terms of how we do it.
Yeah.
The Ravens last year had a number of players coming off PUP, and the having your bye week early in a season like that would actually benefit you in terms of getting your reinforcements in place. At a time the Ravens don't have that luxury this year, but I also don't believe they have anyone on PUP, or if they do, I can't think of who it is. The players would be like Bateman, maybe Duvernay, who is on IR, and I don't know exactly when they have to declare their PUPs. So they may have talent that they'll have to wait on this year. The Ravens have typically worked fairly wisely within that precept, even with J.K. Dobbins last year, who kind of demanded to be activated personally, as far as I can tell. Came back, obviously wasn't the same, went out, got rescoped again on his knee, and then came back and was very good. I think the Ravens generally have played that very well in terms of bringing players off PUP, knowing when a player could be back. In last year was a case with Ajabo with the NFI designation as well, that they activated him late in the year, and he acted as a late season reinforcement.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a good point. The early season, previous year injuries, given that extra week to come back and have more games of impact, that makes a lot of sense too. So there is I guess because the Ravens are relatively healthy exiting the year, as far as like long-term injuries, that this is a good year to have a later bye.
Yeah. Well, that's the way I'd look at it too. And honestly, it's about the biggest advantage they have in the division. They have a +4 there. The Browns have a -4. The Steelers have a -3, and the Bengals have a -2. So they're picking up 8, 7, and 6 points respectively versus each of these teams. So if you do disagree with the way I've done it and say, well, that it's not really worth that much, this is the part you're really probably would be most critical about, and I would understand that if that was the case. Certainly understand it in your case.
Yeah, I'm taking through all the seasons, and I'm pretty sure we haven't had a bye this late. I'm trying to find like what the latest bye was. Otherwise, the Ravens actually had
check 2000.
I think 2000 was week 5, if I recall correctly. Let me see. I'll get back to it.
I think it was before Festivus, if I recall, but let's take a look. Maybe there's 2 byes back then. Is that possible?
Yeah, let's see.
Scheduled by team, Baltimore Ravens. And yeah, they had a bye week in week 14, actually. So it was
yeah, there it is. Yeah, you're right. It must be the week after, or the year after. That was week 5 or something. But anyways, yeah, okay, there you go. 14. That's really late. Sheesh.
Yeah. So it's not quite the latest bye. So we caught ourselves on another error. That's good. Let's move on and talk about opposition byes. And I'm just going to say this for the 900th time to the NFL office people who are not listening to this podcast. There's no reason for this schedule screw up to continue occurring year after year. There is just no reason for it. There's no reason for this laziness. There's no reason to make this error. I don't think you can justify it on a makeup basis in terms of trying to make up for a team that otherwise has scheduling disadvantages or advantages to change the bye week rules. But every team, there are 32 byes in the NFL to be given out. Every team should play one team exactly coming off a bye. It's one of the biggest scheduling disadvantages you can possibly have, is to be playing a team who didn't play the week before. Thursday, playing a team coming off a Thursday the week before is a -3. Playing a team coming off a bye is a -7. Okay. So if everybody had exactly their one expected, we'd be fine. Now, it so happens the Ravens are beneficiaries of the bye week this year. Normally, they have not been. They have been screwed many more times than they benefited from it, including famously in the 2000 season. They played 3 teams coming off a bye.
Jeez.
2001, one of those 2 years. They played 3 teams immediately after their bye. And they, obviously it's just ridiculous. The Giants 1 year recently had 3 teams coming off a bye and just an absurd, scheduling blunder, frankly. Well, anyway, the Ravens, I noticed they didn't play a team coming off the bye. It's the first time in a number of years that's happened. I was very excited by it. And then I went back through and looked at the other teams in the division, and the Browns and Steelers also do not play a team coming off a bye. And that kind of took a lot of the air out of the tires there in terms of value. But the Bengals do. The Bengals play Jacksonville coming off is it Jacksonville? Who do they play? They do play a team coming off a bye anyway. So,
if it's Jacksonville, that's even better. That's actually a good team, Yeah,
it's not Jacksonville. Who is it exactly? I should have color coded this because it's really necessary. Let's see, starting week 5 with the buys. Not any of those. Buy there. Not any of those. Buffalo, maybe? No. I'm not seeing it right now. I'm gonna have to check that again because that would be obviously a big scheduling difference if it did not work out that way. But I believe they've got one team. Seattle. That's who it is. It's Seattle in week. When they play Seattle, come on, that's week 6.
That's a reasonable team.
Seattle's coming off a bye. Yeah, good team and tough game. So hopefully they'll give them a challenge at home anyway. And they have a 0, so they don't have a particular disadvantage in doing this. It's just the other 3 teams in the division all have a big advantage by not playing a team coming off their bye.
Yeah, very interesting. Huh.
So I haven't finished with the subjective adjustments yet, is all I'll say. But the Ravens have a +1 so far, and the reason I did that, and I probably have to give the Bengals a -1 to reciprocate properly, is that the things not captured by the system are tossed into a subjective adjustment. The Ravens game against the Bengals being on a Thursday night, being a +3 for them, doesn't really give you the tiebreakers in the AFC North and how it could impact the playoff race in a very significant manner to have that game be played in Baltimore. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I hate the concept of doing anything but having buys, then playing all divisional games the week after divisional buys, so that you can avoid anybody playing after someone else's buy and not your own. It's the easiest. I always say it doesn't take a set theory wizard to set this up. You just have to think about it just a little bit. Just think, damn it.
Yeah,
get this right. And they haven't done that. And they'll tell you, oh no, we got a million other things to consider, and it's all about our games and our international. And we got to do this. Then other people have buys, they rescheduled. I'm sure they'd come up with a million reasons for you why you can't do it. But I bet there's still, in the billions and billions of combinations that they have, and the hundreds of thousands of combinations that they probably like, that give them a pretty good set of games, they can find the 500 combinations that still allow you to have divisional buys divisional buys preceding divisional games that would then negate the impact of those buys. So frustrating as hell that this occurs the way it does, but it is what it is.
You could tie the Thursday games into that and really just solve so many problems.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many good ways to have done this, but alas, they're just not interested.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, maybe this is part of the thing is, we miss out on all this good analyst talk when people are complaining about the schedule when it gets released if we didn't have unbalanced schedules, So it is.
Well, we all know there's the script, right? they're just playing the script.
Yeah. I don't doubt that there is discussion of that. And it's kind of the catch-all category to we made a mistake and we're not going to worry about it, is that if we didn't have something like that, we'd miss out on all the good, podcast talk about this kind of stuff.
That's right.
So anyway, I didn't come up with subjective adjustments for the Browns or the Steelers. I don't think either of them has too much to be done in their terms. Ravens do have a tough start to the season. They play 4 of the first 6 on the road. So they open against Houston at home, and then they play 4 to 5 on the road, culminating in that trip to London.
Yeah.
Which is a bitch of a road trip, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 home games in the first 8 games played. So it's definitely
and 2 in the first 6 games played.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not great. And I think the other thing I don't like too much is we have a 3-game streak away and a 3-game streak at home. And I like having more of a, alternating schedule. I don't really enjoy having these long breaks away or breaks at home either.
Yeah, me too. And there was one year the Ravens had a home road all the way through for 16-game season in the last 6 years or so.
I think it was literally 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And it had to be more than that. No, it didn't have to be, but I thought it was before they went to 17 games. So that would have made it at least 3 years ago, I believe.
Okay, maybe
but I might be wrong. They might have done it.
It was post 2019. I can tell you that much.
Okay. So it might have been 2020 on the nose. Okay. So in any case, we can look at the subjective adjustment. I think that the Ravens actually gain a benefit from the way their Thursday game is lined in division. I can tell you right now, I would be furious about this if we're in Cincinnati, because the schedule contains so many relative to the division disadvantages for Cincinnati, that to have a Thursday game on top of that scheduled at your arch divisional rival now is just a fairly crappy set of circumstances. And Cincinnati fans, I can only say I feel for you a little bit, although I think it's the Ravens' turn in terms of their chance to benefit from this. And Cincinnati certainly has had a very advantageous schedule, a non-Monday night schedule for a lot of the last couple of decades. And they're going to have a harder time now with some of their games as a first place team being games that end up being in high demand to be in prime time. And Monday night did not happen to be their weakness this year. They only have one Monday night game, despite, having a good year last year.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing I like about this schedule is that we get all those away games early for the division, just because I think it gives you a lot of good information early on to help base your, obviously you're trying to win every game, but it just gives you a lot of really good information about standings early. And since they're away, you feel like, oh, I got the home ones coming up. Like I can make up for it a little bit easier. So I kind of like that a little bit.
If they dig them, you can't afford to lose all of them for obviously, but if you dig yourself a little bit of a hole by losing the game at Cincinnati, and then you have, they play all 3 of their road divisional games in the first 5 weeks.
Yep.
So exactly. They're done with the road in the division by week 5 with the game at Pittsburgh. It's a tough ass stretch, that's for sure. If they didn't have Houston and Indianapolis in there to make it, I think, a little bit easier, and we'll see how good Indianapolis is with their changes this year.
They had a great draft, I feel like. So yeah, we'll see how. Hopefully by week 3 they're not all online. Get it early. But I think it's an interesting schedule too when you look at who they play at the end of the year. So it's nice that we have all those home divisional games, but then you get like some really, really tough teams. 3 games back to back, 2 of them primetime, of Jaguars, 49ers, and Dolphins. That's a really tough stretch. And there's also another tough stretch too, 10 through 12, Browns, Bengals, and Chargers, 2 divisional games. Luckily they're both home games, but then the away game for the Chargers, that's gonna be another challenging streak there. So yeah, definitely a lot of like interesting little subdivisions, I feel like, in this schedule. Even some overlapping subdivisions, depending on how you want to look at it, that'll make for an interesting set of games. Yeah, because like 4 through 8, that of those 5 weeks, only 1 home game, right? Luckily, after that, you get that big stretch of home games. But yeah, there's like all these little mini subdivisions.
Yeah, I like your adjustment change for the subjective adjustment for the Chargers game being on the road after a Thursday game. I think is a significant benefit with a cross country trip like that. So I added a subjective adjustment for that. So I look at the total standings here, and the Ravens have the best schedule in the division, I would say. They're at 16 total points, meaning plus 16. Now, the bias on this entire system should be the average team should just be slightly under 0. Okay, because the bye week is 9.375. And there's a couple of the differences, like maybe the Monday night games don't add up to be exactly 16 in a given year. And I actually didn't check to see how many there were this year. There might be 17, there might be 15, there might be 18 even. The Thursday games, are not exactly
100% coverage.
Yeah. They're actually a little bit over that. With it's still the crap going on at Dallas and Detroit getting the automatic Thursday games.
Right. Fair.
You got stuff going on like that. They don't play them at the end of the year, and so the NFL's done some things to mitigate schedule fairness by making these divisional games be in the last week of the season, so they have a magnified impact. They can have a significant impact on the division, but still, one of the really nice things to do in the last week of the season is to play a good team. So even though you really wouldn't want to have your playoff hopes decided by playing Cincinnati the final week, and you can only obviously play the teams in the division, it is kind of better to play Cincinnati because Cincinnati their fate may have been decided usually to the plus side, such that they would not be working to get a win if you needed one. So you've got a 12-4 Cincinnati team that is already locked into, say, the number 3 seed. They might not care about winning the game, and they might tank it to you in week 17. They certainly would take the opportunity to rest whatever starters they wanted to in a game like that. And you hope to get that kind of an opportunity. One thing you'll notice, I know you bet an occasional Quatlu on football, is spreads in the final week of a football regular season are outrageously large. Large, because motivations are off the charts,
skewed
different directions. Yeah, so it's a nice thing if you can get a unmotivated week 17 team. And something tells me that Pittsburgh, they might be playing to get a better draft pick that week. That's certainly possible, but they also might be playing for a winning season. They might try to extend Tomlin's streak.
Right.
They might be playing just because they hate the Ravens.
Yeah, play spoiler.
Yeah, to play spoiler. So I think the chances are better unfortunately, of something like that happening than I think what Cleveland gets the opportunity to do is potentially benefit from Cincinnati being in a position to tank the game.
Yeah, for sure. I completely get what you're saying. I'm hoping that we're in the position to be tanking the game.
And wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
That'd be lovely.
So anyway, that's basically the whole system we had. But I did want to say the final scores. So the Ravens are at plus 16, and I'll say the Bengals were at plus 17 last year. So a score like this, the Bengals had no negative components all the way up and down. The Ravens the Ravens have 2 this year, but they generally have a lot of positives. These scores are all amazing in the division, and largely related to the bye. But we've got the Browns at plus 12, the Steelers at plus 9, and the Bengals at minus 8. So in a relative sense, the Ravens have nothing to complain about the win in this schedule. There's going to be people who will tell you, oh, it really sucks to play all 3 of their road divisional games in the first 5 weeks. Well, maybe that's bad, or maybe it gives them information, like you say, and they go either 1-2 or 2-1 in those games, and they at least know what they have to do for the rest of the year. If they go 0-3, nothing's going to save them.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I like having the home games later for that because, it just helps. Also, you're going to be more injured by then, in theory, right? Unless you have these carryover injuries like we had before, but like you'll only be more injured. So give that little hometown bump. That helps. All right.
I could buy that. Anything else? Any other comments before we sign off here?
No, I just another good season to look forward to. A lot of I think some really solid games at home. Very curious about this Dolphins revenge game. That really burned for me to have that loss. My first home game as a season ticket holder, so looking for a little bit of revenge there. And so some other really interesting matchups too. Some cool teams we don't normally get to play. I'm excited to see the Lions.
You mentioned the Dolphins game. I will say this about it. I really love having a game against a hot weather team be played in December in Baltimore. And one of the problems with that Miami game last year is that obviously they practice in heat. They really practice in heat during the summer. And when we played them in week 2 in Baltimore, it was a hot day. And they were able to keep it up for 4 quarters. And the Ravens obviously fell apart in the second half of that game defensively. Playing them in December, I think, has a good possibility of really helping the Ravens. Who knows who'll be a quarterback for Miami at that point? Do we have a sense?
I mean, I'm sure they hope it's Tua, but we'll see.
All right. Outstanding. Okay, Alec, always a pleasure to talk football with you. Tell folks where they can talk to you online.
Sure. You can find us online at Twitter at OneWinningPod, and you can listen to our podcast, OneWinningPod.com.
All right. Outstanding. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short this offseason, still looking for folks, have a somewhat of an open mic policy. So hit me up with your idea with a DM on Twitter. You can still do that one play episode if you've got an idea, or if you want to do one and you don't have an idea on what play you want to do, talk to me about it with a couple of DMs and we'll figure out something that you can take as your play. Also looking to talk franchise building with anybody who wants to do that. If you have a topic on that, if you have a metric you'd like to discuss, like whatever it might be, let's talk about that as well. And I'll get back to you very quickly. We'll schedule, I promise you, shortly. Alec, really appreciate you coming on again.
Sure thing.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
Surgeons keep our hearts beating. They do the amazing, help save lives, and so can you. Your CSL plasma donation can help create 24 critical life-saving medicines that can give Grandpa the chance for his heart to swell when he meets his new grandson, or give a bride the chance for her heart to skip a beat on her wedding day. Every plasma donation helps more than you know. Do the amazing. Help save lives. Donate today at your local CSL Plasma Center and be rewarded for your generosity.